everyone, and welcome to Let's Heal with Beth Jones. That's me, your host. My mission is to bring the power of healing to trauma and abuse survivors. That's why every guest on this show will bring you an amazing story of healing in action. So come on, everyone, let's heal. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Let's Heal with Beth Jones. Of course, that's me, your host, and I am delighted to have with me today my friend, Diane Tarantini, and I'm going to let her introduce herself in just a moment to you. But the one thing I want to say about her today is I have so much fun with the work that I'm doing because in this new world that I work in, I get to meet some really cool people who are turning their pain into purpose. And Diane happens to be one of those who has a close parallel to the background of my background. And she's also an author, which is super cool. So we have a little bit in common in our stories. Without further ado, Diane, would you please introduce yourself to our audience today?
Sure. My name is Diane Tarantini, and I'm coming to y'all from West Virginia in the mountains. And I am happily married and have 3 grown and flown kids. I'm an author of 2 books, and I'm a body safety educator in public schools in West Virginia, which means I go into schools and I talk about what is appropriate for kids to be doing and not be doing. And it brings me a lot of joy and satisfaction.
I am absolutely delighted to have you here today. So thank you very much for coming on the show, and I'm excited for our conversation. I really love the work that you do, body safety for kids and being in schools, teaching them early, which I think is so important to combat what you and I probably both know is more significant of a problem than people really want to admit or talk about. But it's definitely out there, my experience, your experience, and something that we could help a lot of kids to not go through what we've gone through if we could teach them earlier about body safety. So I love your work.
Thank you so much. It's always the goal. You are exactly right. There's a lot of organizations out there that are putting all the responsibility on the grown-ups. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that heart. But the fact of the matter is, in 2025, we're not with our kids 24 hours a day. And I think you got to equip the kids as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're not with your kids. You say that you're not with them 24/7. So the likelihood that you're not going to be with them in the moment that something happens, it's almost 100% because that's when it happens.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not with a grown up or a safe adult, as I've heard them referred to now, whether it's whoever you're around, but a safe adult. Yeah. But the reality is that kids who do have something happen to them, they are alone or with just the perpetrator when that happens. So helping them to defend themselves in the best of ways that we can is super important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Only 30% of kids will ever tell in childhood. And you're right. At least 80% of the time, the child is in isolation one-on-one with the person who's causing them harm. So yeah, that's why if you can't be with them, you better equip them.
Yeah, equip them to be able to take care of themselves in those situations for sure, as best they can, for sure. So 30%, what do you think about that stat?
Oh my goodness, it breaks my heart. Probably an equally impactful statistic is and I just said this, gosh, we did 5 body assemblies in one day because that's what a school system required of us. So 3 of us went over, and I told the kids the average age at which a person will tell another person, this bad thing happened to me when I was a little kid. Beth, it's 52 years old.
Yes, I know that. Which is right around my age when I first, around 50 when I first started talking about it. Yes, I am that stat.
Yeah, even if you've been married decades, it can take that long to feel safe with somebody. Or sometimes you randomly make a connection with a new friend and you feel like you can say that. Some people will say it to strangers. I think there's even possibly research that says it can be easier to tell someone you don't know than someone you do know. And then for a whole lot of people, it's when the person who causes them harm passes away.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you feel safe. Then you
Yeah, for a host of reasons and the different
Yeah.
points of being safe there that you talk. Obviously, if you're talking to a trauma therapist or in a support group, that's why they can be so effective, because those people don't know you when you're telling them. And then when the
Right.
person passes away, that's because now you can't hurt them by what you're saying, which I totally get that. I've not had that experience myself where I felt a need to protect someone who hurt me, although I don't talk, I have to say, the one person I do talk quite a lot about my grandfather. He passed away before I got to my 50 mark. It was like, okay, now I'm ready to start talking. I became that stat. I added to it right around there.
Yeah.
So I don't know what would have happened had he been alive when, or if I had come to that place earlier when he were alive. I don't know what would have happened. But I do know there are other things that I'd experienced in my life, and presumably those people are still alive. And I do speak about them, not attributable to a specific person. It's just talking about a death. This happened to me, right? Because I don't have the need to go poking at the person, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what I would have done. I don't know what I would have done with my grandfather. One thing that strikes me too about kids that was definitely my experience, and I think this is why the body safety education and what you're helping to teach kids is so important, is that for me at 5, I didn't have either the awareness of what was happening to me or the vocabulary to describe it. And I literally did not have that for 45 years. And was an adult who, a very close friend of mine who started talking to me about what I was experiencing, that started giving me that awareness and that vocabulary. And then I started reading and I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. And that's a long time to not have what you need to be able to express what's happened to you. So even more of a reason, I think, to help protect kids and help them defend themselves. But if something does happen, they can talk about it, and hopefully in a safe environment.
That's why I think body safety assemblies are so important, because quite possible no one's ever told a young person that what's happening to them is not okay. I talk about how the grown-ups in your life, they build your world. They build your vocabulary and the words and the rules. And you do hear I know a lot of survivors who experienced harm at the hands of their father figure, birth or step, or mom's boyfriend. And they're told, I'm just teaching you, this is what you're going to need to know someday when you get married. And they couch it as this okay, even good thing. Like, I'm doing you a favor by giving you some training, but I want to get in a gym or a cafeteria with 300 middle schoolers and say, you're underage, you're a minor. No one gets to have sex with you. No one gets to touch you, because you can't give consent as a child. You can't. No matter what, even if you say, even if they ask you and you say yes, that's not legally binding. Yeah.
So how do schools, first of all, I'm going to ask that question first. How open are schools to having you come in to talk to kids?
There's this fabulous human named Erin, and she experienced sexual abuse for years, I believe, at the hands of her cousin. She made it her life work to get legislation passed in as many states as possible that every child K through 12 has to see a body safety assembly at least once a year. And it's been, Erin's law has been passed in 38 states. Some schools, there might be schools that handle it well, but some people give the kids a flyer or say, oh, the homeroom teacher will cover that, or the gym teacher. Ideally, you can I go in with a nonprofit SHIELD task force, and the school contacts SHIELD and books us for as many presentations as their student population requires. That's the best case scenario. We come in with a engaging and compelling PowerPoint. There's humor. Sometimes when there's time, we get to do Q&A, which is, I wish we could do it every single time, because those kids have questions. They have questions. But each year we see more asks for presentations than the last year. So I think schools are figuring out, A, it's really important, and B, it's way easier if somebody else comes in and does it than asking that of their own staff. Yeah, because then you got to train the staff, right? So that's a little more of a challenge, I think, to train that. Find some experts like you who can come in and do it. Yeah, they're awfully overstretched. Yeah, I know we talked about this a little bit before when we'd first met about Erin's Law and the 38 states and the implementation, the effectiveness really
is dependent on whether or not schools are doing something to abide by.
Yeah,
And I'm guessing that's all over the map as you go across those 38.
it is. Yeah. And I encourage parents, like if you have kids
Yeah.
still in school, call those schools and say, when is my child going to see a presentation this year?
Yeah, or get
A little bit of
involved.
pressure from the parents.
Get involved.
Yes.
It'd be great for parents to do that and to get involved on behalf of their kids to help with that education for sure. So how do the kids take it? Like the middle schoolers you were just talking about. How do they?
So many people are afraid of middle schoolers, and I just feel like they may be my favorite group, although I've started doing high school this year, and I used to be intimidated by them, but they've been real sweet.
Intimidated by a high schooler?
I just think high schoolers are like too cool and like to have a woman like
I see.
a half a century year old coming and talk to them about these things. But here's the thing. The group that Shield Task Force is committed when they do a body safety assembly, they will always include videos of survivors talking about their personal story. And they'll always include in the presentation. I don't know that they've ever done one without a survivor. And I don't care how much those kids are chatting and whispering and nudging. When a survivor starts talking and it gets real, they just listen up.
Yeah.
More this year than any year that I can remember, Beth, they've been clapping. Like after my video and after my presentation, last week I presented because we had 5 and we took 3 women instead of 3 people instead of 2. One of our presenters was a person who was sex trafficked in California for many years. He's one of the bravest and coolest people I know. And when you like have her story and gosh, it blows your mind. And then I have this really niche child sexual abuse that I experienced, and the kids are just riveted. Yeah.
Yeah, because the stories become real. Right?
Yeah.
And
Usually
that's
I've not seen kids have phones in assemblies, which is super important. That really helps.
Yeah.
But yeah, they can be chatty, but sometimes, like when it's not my turn to talk and I'm like maybe moving around the crowd, you'll hear they're talking about the content. Like when you're like, okay, so raise your hand if you know the word sexting. And they're just like, and only third of them raise their hands. And I'm like, y'all are liars. Y'all are liars because we know 40% of you are doing it. But
that's so
when
funny.
you go through the crowd, you can hear them saying, have you ever done that? Oh my gosh, did you send that when you dated so and so? They're talking about the content. And so I try to give them grace to lean on a classmate for support in a moment when this conversation that's happening up in the front of the room is pretty intense.
Yeah. It's great to know that they're getting engaged though and not blown. And I like the fact that the cell phones aren't allowed in the assemblies. That helps a lot.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, we wouldn't have a chance if they were in the room.
Yeah.
Plus, there'd be viral videos of us floating around probably.
Yeah. That's amazing work that you do. And I met you through Kimberly Keene, who also does the body safety work. So to now know 2 of you that are doing that, and I hope I meet more of you because it's important work. And I need to find somebody in Texas because I'm sure there is. I hope there is someone, but I haven't found that person yet. But as much as I can do to help spread the word about this and let parents know, because I think it's so important. I just think about my own situation. Had I had some body safety myself when I was much younger, it would have changed the trajectory of my life. And that's not my story. It wasn't meant to be my journey, but my journey is about helping to change things in the future. And so I would definitely have been able to do that. So maybe I have a bit of a mission here to help you get the word out.
Yeah. I often tell the kids, I have this like moment where you're like deep breath before you start talking. And I'm like, if I'd had this.
Yeah.
It would have been that, Beth, it would have been that time where I would have just beelined for the talking lady.
Yeah.
And just if she said, if this is going on, it's not okay, tell a safe adult. And we don't see a lot of disclosures in the assemblies because kids don't want to walk up to us in front of 300 peers and everybody know there's something creepy happening to this person.
Right.
At least twice this year, I've had young girls just come up to me immediately. And I'm like, baby, let's go find a private space to have a chat.
Yeah.
But we talk about have a list of 5 safe adults. And I tell the story how I disclosed to my parents 3 different times. And now in body safety assemblies, I tell them have 5 safe adults, make sure a couple of them aren't family in case the person who's harming you is family, because paddling on a family member to a family member can be awkward.
Yes.
If you don't get results with that first grown up, if they've got too much going on, they don't believe you, go to the next adult. But I say the same thing. If I'd had a body safety assembly, growing up, it would have changed everything.
Yeah. And it's just great advice to tell them to have 5 safe adults. But when you say that, and I hope that it's not on the adults to solve this problem, right, and to stop the tragedy. It is, we need the children to help because they're the source of where it happens, right? It happens to them, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like adults, I'm one of those people, and you're in that age group, right? We're all over the place with how we respond to the types of things, right? And so it's sad to me that you have to tell them to have 5. And I think the reason why it's sad to me, first, about the reality of the state of where adults are in being able to accept that this is a reality of what's happening to kids. That's one aspect of it. But the other thing that I think about is how hard that child has to work when the first one doesn't respond that they should, that helps the child to feel heard and validated and like they're going to get help. Because it's like a slap in the face, a punch in the gut, brings them down in their confidence, notches them down, all kinds of going on in our heads. And then there is that question, even though they've heard you say have 5, and if the first one doesn't work, keep going. The natural reaction when you go to the first one, if it's, and let's say it's a parent, the natural reaction is to do all the awful things that we do to ourselves and not move forward to the second one. And that having to go through, God bless the child who has to go through all 5.
Yes.
The 5th one that actually takes them serious and helps them. And that's sad to me. That's the state of the reality of the way things are, that you need to advise children to have 5 safe adults on their list. And really, if they're at the 5th one, then you've actually said you need 5 because the first 4 aren't going to be safe. And I think about myself having to go through, I equate it to my experience with therapy, right? And it took me so long, such hard work to get to a therapist who could actually help me. And I know how hard that was. And for a child to have to go through that same process is, let's say, it's fantastic advice you give them, and somebody there telling them it might happen. So have your list, but kids.
Yeah. It takes so much courage. It takes so much courage. And that's one thing I love about the video that we made at the end. I tell them, gosh, unlike you, I got a good therapist on the first shot.
Mine wasn't the first shot. It took me a long time. When I got to trauma therapy, the first trauma therapist was perfect. All the ones before that weren't trauma therapists. But they weren't trauma therapists.
Yeah, but when I say what my therapist told me at the end of the hour or so it takes you to tell your story, I was like, this is your script. And I tell it to the kids because an interesting stat is often the first person a kid will tell will be another kid. And so it's sad that I'm actually telling all the grown-ups in the room, this is how you receive a disclosure. But I'm also telling the kids, you say, I believe you. It was wrong. Thank you for telling me. How can I support you?
Yeah.
That's what a survivor needs to hear. I believe you.
Yes.
I believe you.
It is what a survivor needs to hear. First words out of the mouth. I believe you. How can I support you? Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit more about you. And I do want to talk about your healing journey because the show is called Let's Heal. That's what we focus on.
You do, yes.
It's about your purpose that's come out of your experiences, which is a great place to start because it's vitally important. So I'm glad we did start there. But let's spend a little bit of time talking about your healing journey. And as we all know, when we've had to go down that path, there's a reason why we needed to heal. So this is my invitation to you to say whatever you would like, as little or as much as you would like to say about the past that got you to the point of where you needed to heal.
Okay. I've said to you, I've often said when I'm speaking to groups, and I have a sign up here on my inspiration board, ever since the 4th grade, I knew 2 things. I'd get counseling and I'd write a book. So imagine a 9-year-old knowing they need professional counseling.
I cannot. I mean, when you told me that the first time, I was stunned. And I am still stunned today.
Yeah.
Myself at 4th grade, not a chance.
Yeah. I think part of the reason I knew I needed counseling was because my mom struggled with mental illness, probably always, but I think she got a diagnosis of manic depression in the 70s, which we now call bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
But she was in counseling a lot, talked psychobabble, or that's probably not a nice word for it. Just like, how does that, I'm not a mind reader. How does that make you feel? Like that kind of language, which is good language. But so I think that might be where little 9th grade Diane or 9-year-old Diane figured out that she needed counseling. But I won't dwell on the details, but the core issue that I dealt with was sibling sexual abuse, which through my work in child safety, I now know affects 1 in 25 kids. But, oh my goodness, as 2 years ago, nobody had heard this. The topic's just starting to get traction. There's been a TEDx talk. 4 of us have written memoirs about it. But that was what I was dealing with growing up. An older brother, he was 5 years older than me, was abusing me. And then later on, I learned that he was also abusing my brother, who's 2 years older than me. So mom's mentally ill. Dad's like super smart, a psychology professor, ironically, but not emotionally available. So it just, a lot of survivors of intrafamilial sexual abuse, SSA or otherwise, will tell you that it can be a big family, there can be mental illness, and the home environment is chaotic.
Yeah.
And so that was my experience. But even though I said when I was 9, I'm going to get counseling one day, it didn't happen until I was 35 years old. So I thought I was old to be disclosing, but then I heard the 52-year-old and I was like, oh, I wasn't too bad.
Right.
But what happened, my inciting incident to get my butt into counseling was I called myself mean mommy. I never raised a hand against my kids, but I yelled a lot. Mm-hmm. And it was often like, if you just do what I say, I wouldn't be mad all the time. It was just that need for control, because when a young person is being sexually abused, they don't feel like they're in control of their life. And so I think it was me, like, belatedly just trying to control everything, make my children do everything I asked of them 15 seconds after I asked it of them. And I just got to the point where I said, I don't want my children's memory of me to be mean mommy. And I talked to a friend, I think it was probably after a couple glasses of wine. I didn't tell her about the childhood trauma, but I told her how grumpy I was. And she said, sounds like you need a happy pill.
Oh, goodness.
Just when antidepressants were starting to uptick.
Yeah, it was 20 years ago, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So she got out a pen and paper out of her purse, and she wrote down her doctor. He's just the best doctor ever. And I went and I got a prescription for Paxil. Back then it was Paxil. And went off the Paxil to have our 3rd baby. My doc said, you don't need to. It's a safe med. But I didn't want to be on drugs, legal or otherwise, while I was trying to have another baby. And then the anger and grumpiness and short temper came back after the 3rd baby. And I went back for a prescription a couple times. And finally, this doctor looked me in the eyes and said, let me tell you something. Antidepressants are often only a Band-Aid for a deeper problem. is there a deeper problem? And I'm telling you what, for a medical professional to say that 20 years ago is way ahead of their time.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad he
Because
did
they
it.
were happy to hand out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It was always the
They
answer.
didn't want to do.
Yeah.
They weren't interested in fixing your head.
Yeah.
And I had to decide in that moment whether it was better to tell my secret or just to keep it. And just in that thought process, in that 60 seconds, I was like, I've kept silent about this for 35 years and it hasn't done me any good. I'm going to tell him. And I did. And he was super compassionate. And he got out his prescription pad and he just kept ripping off pages and writing on the back of them.
Oh.
And he was just writing down therapists and counselors and clinic
Wow.
and practices. And he goes, keep trying these people until you find the one you connect with. I'll give you another prescription, but please, if you need anything in 6 months, like I'll see you in 6 months, but if you need anything before then, let me know. And that's when I started talk therapy, and thankfully, I went to a practice that specialized in PTSD.
Yeah.
And my counselor literally said, because I think I had to give them a tiny bit of my story on the phone when I was booking who to slot me with. And I usually work with kids, but your trauma was in childhood. And so let's give it a go. Just have one session, figure out if we connect. And we did. And did talk therapy with her, did EMDR when it very first started.
I've had huge success with that.
In the third time. Do they still do the finger, or is it a little machine now?
No, my therapist does it with finger or pen line. Okay. Yeah.
And then at one point she said, I want you to try art therapy. I've written a memoir like this.
I know we're going to talk about that.
Yes, I'm not going to steal.
Don't steal it all.
An art therapy.
You know what strikes me though, what you're talking about though, what you're saying here, which I think is so important. And this is what strikes me about what you've just said about dealing with one. Of course, this was back a few years ago, right? And so there's getting into dealing with the effects of the childhood trauma. More and more therapists doing that.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that you were with a therapist who only dealt with children. She's telling you to go to art therapy, right? So she's focusing on all the things that are getting to you as the child who's the hurt. That was the hurt, Diane, right? Was the child. Yeah. And okay, so you've grown the shell of an adult around that hurt child. But when we are harmed as children, like that little person is still inside of us. And that's the little person who has to be healed and dealt with. And that's your experience, which has been mine as well.
There wasn't the inner child language that there is today.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure that's what was happening.
Before I even told my story, she said, when you tell your story, you can refer to yourself as little Diane, if that helps. And so I did. And then, from there, I appreciate this because I know people that, and no shame to anybody who's doing this, but I know people that are into their second decade of counseling. But she said, I think you're ready for body work. After talk therapy, art therapy, she gave me another therapist card to do body work with and explained what that was. And I worked with that woman for a period of time.
What is that? I'm not sure I know what that is. Body work.
One of my favorite things that she did, this subsequent therapist, was she took me from her office to an office or a room next door. And there's a giant pile of pillows on the floor. And she handed me a tennis racket and just said, beat the crap out of the pile of pillows. Go at it. Take out all your anger.
Yeah.
She did the stand and pretend like your feet are putting roots into the ground.
Yeah. So what we call somatics. What we call somatics.
Somatic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Fortunately, that therapist referred me to and my husband to a marriage counselor who I think was lacking in ethics. And he did a couple things that, I think we maybe saw him twice. And then I was like, I'm done here. Didn't like him at all.
Sorry about that.
And then I went back to the therapist who referred him and expressed that I thought he was a very bad man. And
Also traumatic.
Yeah, he was gross. To the point where, and this is a pro tip for people, when you start resenting the time you're spending in therapy and the handing over of the check or the credit card,
it's time to go.
You're done.
It's time to go. I agree. Yeah, I agree. If you're not getting anything out of it anymore, I talk about my therapist a lot because she has been an absolute godsend in my life. And I'm coming up on my 5-year anniversary with her. And I don't see myself not having her in my life.
Yes.
And over time, we've done a lot of the healing work. And as you go on your healing journey, and for me, especially, they're excavating deeper layers of healing. And I also know that I experience what I experience for purposes of being able to share my lived experiences with other people. So I feel like that's part of why to be with her. But we do spend time when I'm not actively in talk therapy or EMDR for something that I'm trying to process with her. We are spending time helping me to grow and to be a more evolved human being and to step into the work that I'm supposed to be doing and meant to be doing now, which there is an intersect there of healing the inner child that I've had to do is like, I'm meant to be in this public space where I'm speaking with people and on stages and letting people see me. But my inner child, my 5-year-old, who was the first one who was wounded, all she's ever wanted to do was hide. And so I think two things don't go very well together. So there's an element of the inner child work, but it's also about expanding me and helping me to see myself where I'm meant to go. And so I don't know that I'm ever going to get to that place where I'm going to feel like with Monica that I'm like begrudging handing over the check.
Well, definitely, if you're working on
but I do feel like it's different for everyone. But it is a pro tip, and I agree with you. And what I would say about that is that's an indication that you're not in the place that you need to be, and whether it's for a reason,
either you're done or you need.
Right, or there's some other reason. But when you feel that way, you don't owe that therapist anything except to go on and do what's right for you. And that's it. So I totally agree with you about that. But having said that, I also do encourage people to do the work to find a therapist that they can actually, I think therapy is more about a relationship, and that's how we should treat the therapeutic relationship, is working to have someone who we do have rapport with, who we do trust, want, and who is, for me, she's a first point of call. If I really have something difficult that I'm dealing with, she is a first point of call, or as soon as I'm going to see her, that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And that's important. And also something that I'm a huge advocate for, that I wish that's my pro tip, right? Is work aspect of having a therapist, that you don't have to use your pro tip, which is my second pro tip, leave if you're not in the place anymore.
Yeah. I just started collaborating with just a darling young woman who has significant childhood harm. And she says she goes back to her go-to person once a month. And I'm like, I think I might like to try that, especially because I'm starting to hear so many people talk about these monumental gains they're making in EMDR. I did not experience that. And so I think I want to go back now that they've got 20 years of perfecting EMDR, because I want to see if there's more stuff I have.
So I've actually done EMDR with 3 different providers. And the first 2 times I did it was years ago. So probably in that 20-year ago mark that you're referring to. Yeah. And I did not connect with it at all. And I wasn't connecting with the therapist. And it was not, and there could be all kind of reasons for that. Ultimately, what I know about me is it wasn't my time to heal. And that's just part of my journey and my experience to be able to share that with people. So I just wasn't in the place to really be, even though I had this nagging pull, I need help, I need to be in therapy. Yeah. No idea why. I couldn't tell a therapist why. And so the 2 back in those days that actually tried to do something to help me, we tried EMDR and I couldn't connect with it at all. But it was exploratory, like you say, right? Yeah. Like I have a known event or a known issue that I want to process through EMDR. I wasn't in that space, which is helpful with EMDR. Now, maybe 20 years on, and because I was working with someone who I have, and honestly, when I started working with Monica, I knew her and I had met her a few years before and had liked her. And when I actively started in trauma therapy, and that's why I went to her really quickly, we got into EMDR and we had a connection, an early rapport that was building. But she's super, super skilled. And maybe that is the 20 plus years now of the testing and knowing how to administer it and what to look for and how to do it. I think it's her as an individual as well. But I have, and we've even actually adapted it to where I use it the way I need to use it uniquely for me, which a master and wonderful at doing that for me. So I would highly encourage you to try it.
Yeah.
Control of it so that you're using it the way that you want it to be used on you with your print and all that. Because it's just, I had huge success the third time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And recently. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. So you held up your book. Let's talk about, and by the way, thank you. So if I could just say thank you for all of that you've shared, which was amazing. I really appreciate you sharing all of that about your story because it's so helpful to anyone who hears you talking about it. And I feel like whatever you're saying is what you're meant to say for the people who will listen to the show. So thank you very much for that. And I also want to say just my heartfelt, I'm sorry to you for what you experienced. So I know it's behind you, and I know you're doing great things now and have turned it around for good purposes, but there still is that pain I carry. I'm assuming there's a little from Gary. It doesn't ever fully, not the way it was supposed to happen. It is the way it was supposed to happen. It's a hard thing to say, but that pain
shouldn't happen to kids.
No, they shouldn't. And that pain is still there. And I think,
say it.
Yeah. And that is true. But I also think even as much work as I've done, and I don't know if you're the same way or not, but I don't think, if I let myself, there is pain attached to what I've experienced, right? I've healed past it and it doesn't control me anymore. It doesn't define my life. It doesn't define my emotions. It doesn't block my ability to engage in loving relationships with people anymore. The pain of what I have been through is still there if I pause a moment to think of it. And I think that's what I feel for you. And that's what I'm sorry for, is that you experienced that at all.
Yes, I appreciate that.
But kudos to you for all the work you've done, and thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. Yeah. All right, let's talk about your book. So which one did you write first? There are two. At least two.
The first one I wrote, and I don't have a copy up here, is The Brave Knight.
The Brave.
So I'll tell you how I became a body safety educator, because it was after therapy and then raising kids. It was on the tail end of raising kids. But I heard about the organization that used survivors in body safety assemblies. And this is where I think you and I are probably built the same. We can stand in front of people and talk about hard things for their benefit.
Yes.
And so I contacted the founder of the nonprofit and said, I love kids. I've raised 3 awesome ones. I'm a survivor and I'm comfortable in front of large groups, either grown-ups or kids. And so I started shadowing the speakers they had in place. This was right before the pandemic. And about 6 months in, he asked me, will you write a children's book, which in a non-threatening way teaches kids what grooming is, which is the process by which a sexual predator will gain a potential victim's trust. And it sounded daunting, but ironically, within a week's time, I woke up with the idea fully formed in my head.
That's God, by the way.
Yeah, the very first, my first choice of illustrator said, she said, a book about grooming for little kids? Ew, no. And then she goes, okay, fine, I'll take a look at the manuscript. And she looked at it and she said, I want in.
Yeah.
So it's a fantastic book. But I never thought I'd write a children's book. I thought I'd write the memoir.
Yeah.
And then I saw the woman, this is so funny if she listens to this. I saw the woman do a TED Talk on sibling sexual abuse. I think it was 2020. And I started stalking her, just following her on social media. And I read that she was coming out with a memoir. And I thought, I have to get my book out before her book, because her book will just blot out the sun. And so I got a developmental editor. We whipped that book into shape, and I released it last April. Yeah, released it last April. Because I'd done The Brave Knight, that book, they wanted me to produce The Brave Knight in 8 weeks in order for another nonprofit to buy 7,000 copies. So I figured out, like, my mantra during that time is just do the next right thing. And I got The Brave Knight produced and printed. And so, having been through the process once, I did it again with the memoir. And a lot of people, gosh, it took me so dang long. I think I started in 2009. But I kept starting over, and I kept letting different people look at the project, and they'd say, change this. And so it took me a long time, but it was only that kick in the butt, get your book out before Jane Epstein's, that I finally got it done. And I got it done really well. I'm super proud of it.
And you have a copy of it there. Will you hold it up again? Yeah.
It's Everyone Was Silent. And this is my childhood home. Everybody liked the cover, but I was in a meeting with an acquisitions editor, and it had a different title for years. And she goes, do you know what? I couldn't stop thinking as I was reading your manuscript. I'm like, what? She goes, Everyone Was Silent. And I'm like, I think you just renamed my book. And so I don't know about your story, but like anybody I know who's like experienced intrafamilial child abuse, where it goes on for years and there's lots of secrets and silence and creeping around. That title really resonates with them.
Yeah, that's the same experience in our family. And I think, and it is familial generational abuse, which we're on the tail end of that. So it was my grandfather who abused me and sexually abused me. And that was the last of that generation.
Oh, it stopped with you? Did it stop with you?
So my father actually stopped with my grandfather. So the generations past my grandfather have not done that. So my dad did not. So my dad,
got it.
He's the cycle breaker. And then I'm what they call the curse breaker, who's meant to try to clean up all the emotional. It's why I'm the healer, is to try to help clean up all the remaining residual effect. Because as I say to people, even though my father did not sexually abuse me, you don't grow up in a home like the one that he grew up in, a family that he grew up in, not have some manifestation of that pain and that trauma that is still in you. He still is a survivor. And there are other things that he experienced, other types of father experienced. But that sexual abuse was stopped. Like, it did not come past him to my sister and not going further down. I don't have kids, but my sister does. So it's not moving down in that way.
Yes.
Which is right. But you are right. Looking back in my family, the history there, everyone was silent. And it's only been my generation. So myself and cousins who are coming to the reality and in our 50s.
Yes.
We're the classic, right? So we're dealing with all these classic ways that it's just been for so many generations, right? Where everyone was silent for years. And when my aunt was the one in the family who first started talking about it years and years ago, and she's passed on now, but everyone still wanted to be silent, even when she started trying to talk about it, which traumas for her that she was dealing with. Just a lot of
don't stay silent. We catch all the crap, don't we?
Yes. And it's taken getting into my generation and me talking about it, my cousins talking about it, where everybody's starting to go, okay, this is a thing, this is a reality in our family, but that everyone was silent is a great time. It's so much the reality.
As passionate as I am about sibling sexual abuse, incest, it's a creepy word.
Yeah, in the family, it is.
I had a New York City agent stop me mid-pitch and say, never say that word in front of a publishing official again, or publishing professional again. Never use the word incest.
Why?
They're like, because they would rather...
Because everyone wants to be silent?
Exactly. They would rather you say intrafamilial sex abuse than incest. It just carries more creep factor. Yeah.
What do you mean creep factor? It's all the same.
Like in publishing, they don't...
This is why I self-publish.
They don't want abuse stories.
Well, this is why I self-publish, because you can't tell me what I'm going to put in my own book. Not going to happen.
They don't want abuse stories unless maybe you're a big-time celebrity.
Yeah, they want
let
the sensational.
Let it be like stranger danger. Don't let it be in the family. That's Beverly Hillbillies. That's so gross. Yeah, no, there's a lot of people trying to shut down anybody doing...
telling the truth, the real story. really works. The stranger
Yeah.
danger is, what is the stat on that? It's so low.
Oh, yeah.
It actually is.
95% of victims know their abuser. Yeah.
5%
Yes.
is that stranger danger
Yeah.
category.
Yeah, there's a great organization that you could be part of. It's incestaware.org. And they have an alliance. They have an alliance. It's anyone. You don't have to be a survivor, but most of us are. And it's all different kinds. It's like uncle, dad, granddad, cousin, sibling. And if you're doing the work of helping people heal or preventing or education.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Incest
I will.
Aware Alliance is a great
I will
organization.
alliance. All right, I will definitely check that out. Yeah. Yeah. All right. I am going to drop links to your both of them in the show notes for this and also your contact information. So if our audience wants to connect with you, how do they do that?
So I have a website that has a blog on it, and there's a contact link. I'm DianeTarantini.com. And there's lots of really helpful articles about all things child safety. I even have an article on how to be a body safety educator. And a lot of people really seem interested in doing that work.
Yeah.
You just have to find the nonprofit or the school system that'll allow you to do that. But we'll do that.
That makes... Yeah, I'm actually going to explore that article because I've been searching for the ways in which I want to connect with nonprofit organizations, and it has to be something that's deeply meaningful to me. And I could definitely see myself standing up in assemblies talking to, and I wouldn't be afraid of any of them. The littles might scare me, but I wouldn't be afraid of any of them talking about body safety. So I'm gonna check that out and figure out what's happening here in Texas and.
It definitely, for people who do advocacy work around education and prevention and healing, it does help you heal. I call it, I've been saying this year, it's how I make lemonade out of the bitter lemons of my childhood.
The work we do.
So it's just, if you don't do anything with the pain, that's a little bit of a lost opportunity. Not that everybody's built to do it. I'm not shaming anybody because they don't do it. But if you feel like you want to, I'm going to tell you, when a child comes up to you because you shared your story, that's super meaningful. And you're like, it wasn't for nothing.
Yes.
It wasn't for nothing. I helped this little person.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's a great way to be able to do it with some direct impact, which I think is amazing. Yeah. But I am going to definitely check it out for myself because I can't believe we didn't talk about this before, but now I'm going to look at that. So we awesome. All right. And you're also on social media. Yeah.
I think I wasn't really thoughtful and intentional when I did my social media handle. I think it's Diane Tarantini author on my Facebook page. Well, it's writing Diane T. Yeah, we can drop them in I'll just send all of them and you can pick and choose which ones you want to.
We'll link all of them.
Or even if all of the links are on the homepage of my website.
We'll get them all out there so that everyone can find you, and we will link to some of these other organizations that we've talked about as well for anyone who's interested in checking them out. Thank you. It's delightful to see you again. I'm so happy to have you here, and I really am very inspired by all of the work that you're doing, and I love it that it's the kids.
Oh my goodness. I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah.
I think you'd be a great addition to the body safety.
I think educator. I would be too. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, part of my passion, aligning directly with my passion. So that'll be wonderful. All right. It's very good to see you.
Yay.
All right. Take care of yourself.
You too. Talk to you soon.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here on today's episode of Let's Heal. And as I always say to you, come on, everyone. Let's heal. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode of Let's Heal with Beth Jones. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel at Beth Jones Healing Mentor. And if you'd like to know more about me and my work to help other survivors to heal, please visit me on the web at empoweredsurvivors.com.